Please record. We have that going. And we will start our lovely handy dandy AI companion Zoom summary as well. So an official welcome. We'll have a few more, I think, joining us, but welcome to our journey into the future, a non-webinar-like experience. This is engaging. It's interactive. It's an opportunity to share and an opportunity to question and to challenge. I will share a little bit of perspective of just how I see the world changing very rapidly and some of the development since we were together in June. And then I will open up for some questions, dialogue around what I share. And then I will turn over and I'll shut up here for a moment and introduce our guest, Shaheen Khan from Silicon Valley, who is a visionary and a technologist that we've worked together for many, many years. And maybe, Shaheen, you just say a couple of words about yourself, because I don't think people know who you are or have met you yet.
Yeah, happy to. I'm delighted to be here, and I have tracked some of you over the years as well. So I'm really looking forward to a discussion. I'm in a very small company called Orion X. We basically do technology trends. We keep track of all the buzzwords of the day. So if it's out there, we're on it, and we try to connect the dots. And our background and where we grew up was in supercomputing. So we're all kind of sufficiently geeky to be able to go a little bit deep, and some of us more than others. I have colleagues who really help me keep up with things. And then we apply that to fundamentally marketing. So framing, positioning, messaging, that's really the bread and butter of the business. And then as of the past couple of years or so, we've also been applying it to policy. So it's really technology, marketing, and policy is the combination that I personally like, and I track and I enjoy it. So life is good. And part of that, of course, being in Silicon Valley, is the pace of change here is really quite, you could argue that it is not healthy, actually. But it is what it is. And therefore, you kind of get a front row seat to a lot of different changes, many of which can actually lead to something, some of which really don't. But you kind of get that flavor. And I think that's important too for this kind of a discussion. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And welcome, Indira. Welcome, Jay. And I will also pass on hello and regrets from Thomas Aguilera that many of you have known in the last few sessions. He is heavily involved in his role as CEO of a still stealth, but in AI and mobility kind of adventure. So he will not be with us today, but sends very good thoughts and very good regards to us all. And so I'm going to jump over here and share screen and just go through a few things of what I've seen over the last 2 months, which seems like a very, very long time, even though the amount of activity is probably more like 2 years worth of activity in the area of technology growth. And that's both in growth and development. But from my perspective, it's growth in application, usage, integration, and benefits. And so as we take this journey together, which is the way I look at today, it's one step at a time. We invite you to note the link here, and I'll put it back in the chat to give us feedback at the end of the session, because you have an opportunity to shape maybe not everything in the future, but the way we're looking at it and the way we're progressing, and we certainly hope you join us in the future. But this today is literally the time, more than any other time, that I would say anyone that is not leaning in, embracing, and using AI in particular is being left behind. Back in June, there were a lot of people that were saying, yes, let's get started. Let's try to explore. Help me to understand where I can learn, where I can apply. I personally have seen in our clients globally that shift from just simply June until August to here's what we've applied, here's what's worked, here's what hasn't, how do we take it to the next level? In some of the conversations I've had with leadership teams in Latin America, in the Middle East, in Silicon Valley, it's no longer a question of if and how. It's a question of how do we accelerate it? So it is there. This is the time to jump in. And just as a point of reference, back in November when we kicked off this program, we talked a little bit about this Neuralink implant, which is, in short words, it's a computer chip that can be implanted into a human brain and can communicate directly. The brain, via the chip, can communicate to devices and can be powered through AI and other technologies to gather signals, to gather information, ultimately to be able to accelerate the processing of the brain. Back in November, Thomas shared an example of this, and there was a lot of shock around our session of, oh, humans with chips in their brain, that's just insane. There was a first trial at the beginning of the year. Today, there's already been a second human that this has been implanted in. With the initial applications of what can come from what's in the brain going through the chip to the device, opportunities to explore how technology can work with the human brain to mitigate issues such as, for example, Parkinson's disease, which can have an impact on the neural processing of sensory and activities. Could that be minimized through this type of an implant? Could other forms of disease or issues or potential disabilities be treated through technology that can pick up and sensor brain waves, can look for abnormalities, can through AI make predictions of how things are going to develop in the human brain? That has gone from being a kind of way out there Star Trek idea a year ago to being real. So in applications way beyond what we're doing today, in the medical field, in education, in retail, a lot of these areas, technology is being developed at a faster pace than one would have ever dreamed in the past. And that, for a lot of people, can bring up that question of, is this good or is this bad? Personally, I believe that technology, just like any tool in our toolboxes, could be used for bad. Yes, somebody with bad intent could use implants in the brain to have negative implications, just like somebody with bad intent with a kitchen knife could stab somebody. But the possibilities of positive of this kind of technology, I believe, is way greater than any potential negatives. And in healthcare in particular, when I think back to people in my life who have had health issues, especially as they get older, I recall my aunt, my uncle many times saying, I have this problem, and I go to the doctor and I tell him, and he says, well, here, why don't you try this for a week and come back and see what it does to you? If that medication doesn't work, we'll try something else. And they often joked about doctors are simply practicing on us as people. But when we think about today with technology, just the basics of what we have today with using AI, using predictive analytics to look at abnormalities in people and to look at characteristics in the human genome to determine what is the probability that somebody is going to develop this issue. And maybe we could even proactively mitigate, prevent, or treat this problem that a person might ultimately manifest. If the problem comes, the doctor can, based on research, based on analytics, based on scans, based on knowledge of the genetics of that person, based on knowledge of their history, can prescribe based on individual, private, personalized recommendations for you, John. This is the right medication to treat this right problem that you're having today, based on history, your genome, your DNA, etc. So I believe in another 5, 10, 20 years, when some of us may be going to doctors with problems, it won't be going for the doctor to practice on us. It will be going to say, you know everything about me. You tell me what is the right thing I should either take, eat, do in order to solve this problem or to prevent other problems from coming. So I believe that the advances we're seeing going from AI to high performance computing, to the scanning, to the research, to the analytics, is going to give us a much healthier society in many ways, as well as a society in which our lives are much more convenient. I wouldn't say easy, but I would say convenient. Things like VinHub. And if you haven't seen anything about this, I encourage you to look at vinhub.com. It's a new, fresh, startup, growing, fast scaling business that is a convenience store, in essence, that is completely autonomous, completely stocked by robotics, AI tracking what are the needs and what are the requirements in this particular area to ensure that the right items are available at the right time. Everything is completely autonomous in checkout, delivery, security, and tracking systems. That can be the future of retail, replacing the 7-Elevens, the Narvisons, etc., that if you're lucky, they have what you need and you stand in a queue for 25 minutes futzing around to buy that coffee that you want. So our lives can be healthier, they can be happier, and they can certainly be a lot more convenient through the technology at the pace at which it's going, sooner rather than later. The other aspect of this, of course, is back to us as people in our day-to-day offices. And that's where AI is making huge strides in freeing people from the day-to-day activities. If you're not already using ChatGPT, Microsoft Assist, Adobe Assist, to do the basics of writing, the basics of image creation through Firefly, through the various Dolly tools, other tools. If you're not using those to start your process of creativity, you're definitely falling behind. And when I talk about creativity, that ability to go into a simple tool and begin the process is just simply exactly that, the beginning of the process. That's not writing the document. That's not necessarily creating the perfect image for the post. It's giving you the beginning of the ideas. So AI can be the beginning of ideas that people can then collaborate together, share, brainstorm, challenge in order to build the ultimate product, whether that's the LinkedIn post, whether that's the long dissertation, whether that's the PowerPoint. But AI frees us from that blank slate of paper that got to do these 5 things to allow us to be that much more creative. I was in a very interesting session earlier this week with the Warner Brothers team. It was Warner Brothers and Adobe. And an interesting stat that I had not heard before, but a lot of data behind it, that within our human brain, 80% of the brain capacity is for creativity. 80% of how we're designed is to be creative, to think differently, to question. So think about when you're away from your office, you're away from the to-do list, you're out having a walk in the forest. Those ideas that just float through your mind. That's coming through that capacity that's in your brain when you get rid of all of the, oh, I need to write this and I need to follow up on this and I need to pay this and I need to do this and I forgot to schedule. All of that to-do stuff, that gets in the way of that 80% of creativity, of what could be possible. So if we can use AI to do more and more of those to-dos, I've got to write the LinkedIn post for tomorrow. I've got to think of a picture to put in that PowerPoint for the board meeting. I've got to do this. I've got to look up this. I've got to research this. Give all of that to AI, because it can do that. And that can be that 20% of your brain goes there. The 80% goes into thinking bigger. What else can I do? That's where humans have a huge advantage over technology, because we can create, we can come up with the big pictures, letting the technology do the basics. So a question that often comes up in these sessions and in my day-to-day work is, this all sounds great and good, that there will be this beautiful future where all of our medical problems are solved automatically. We can pick up what we want when we want it going to the train. We're creative, we're having fun. How do we get there? It is a journey. There isn't one right way. And I fully believe if somebody tells you, go buy that book, go listen to that talk, that'll be the 5 steps you need to be successful in the future, I mean, they're crazy. Because there's not 5 steps that you can take. We're all different. We all need to explore in our own way. And there's a lot of different paths. There's a lot of different problems to be solved. So the best way to get to the top is to start trying things. Explore. Maybe it's ChatGPT. Maybe it's Dolly. Maybe it's Firefly. Maybe it's Midjourney. Try some of the different tools that can get rid of some of those to-dos on your list, and think differently, think bigger, and be open to what the future might bring. It's the best way potentially to get there. And today is the time to start in that respect. So I'm going to take a pause, and I am sure there are questions. I can scan through the chat here, but jump in and raise your hand, wave your hand, and yell out questions, comments, and thoughts so far. Ah, the Collier implants. That's a great example, Jay. Having a bit of a hearing problem myself. I mean, I'm looking forward to lots of opportunities to sort that one. Other questions, don't be shy. Welcome, Drew, and welcome, Joanne. I didn't get a chance to welcome you earlier there. And Dara, you always have good questions.
First and foremost, thank you very much. And this time I didn't have any question, but I just want really to give my support and to emphasize that I cannot agree more that it is already not now time to start. The time has already passed, you know, for all those who didn't start it. And talking all about these possibilities and domains where we can use AI and leverage AI really to make the life better and more qualitative for all of us. I've seen some of these examples, and then I have reflection. Oh my God, that would be mind blowing if I would have such a one in my surrounding, so that I can go and buy something on Sunday. You know, because in Switzerland everything is closed on Sunday. So. And thinking about that, yes, I think I have experienced that I have freed some of my brain time for better things, to think bigger, to envision the things that I never thought of I could do, or would be something that I would have time for. And no, I am not at all afraid that AI will replace people, but that will definitely replace the people who didn't learn how to leverage and use AI. So that's just, and thank you so much for raising awareness. It's amazing all the job that you do, and thank you for all other attendees. Thank you.
We're on a journey together, my dear. Other thoughts or comments? Luz. Luz, I
Yeah,
see it says you raise your hand.
yeah, I did. Thank you so much for having me. Just a quick introduction of myself. I'm a small business owner from Norway. So the way I've kind of attacked the whole AI thing is to hold workshops for small to medium businesses where I involve everyone in the company so that everyone gets to share and see the power of the tools. So hopefully that is a good way to sort of just get a company started, right? Until they refined and actually find their specific needs for AI in their for their toolbox. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to hear if you guys have any comments on that. Mm. Thanks again for having me.
From my viewpoint, that's the best way, is just jump in and learn. I mean, I've seen a number of our clients that have what they call weekly learning labs, where maybe it's a Friday at noon, bring everybody together and just share. Here's what I tried this week. Here's how it worked. Here's what I tried and it didn't work. Just sharing, because there isn't a one right way. It's getting people from different angles to use different tools and learn together. It's a great approach. Great approach. Carol.
Yeah, I'm in the US, and just to introduce myself, I'm a women-centered coach and do many other transformational techniques. I'll shorten it that way. And I've been in what I've been calling semi-retirement, because I moved to the mountains, and then my mother and mother-in-law, elder care, and then we got into the last 4 years. And I've been spending the last year and a half figuring out what I want to do. And when I found AI, it made it so phenomenally easier. Like, I actually am enjoying putting posts on my social media because my soft launch is starting next month. And well, actually it technically started on Saturday. So, and I'm like, wow, when I have something to engage in to help create my content from all the knowledge that I have in here, I'm like, well, this is actually kind of fun to do Facebook and to create all my handouts and all my programs. And it's like, now I'm like, how can I launch all these programs that I want to do because now I have so many of them. So it's been really exciting to embrace it. And Jennifer being in my life for all these many years has really helped me lean into something like that. Because I've worked on my own for so many years now, where I had been in corporate America up until 30 years ago. So help keep me abreast. Those, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I'm gonna jump over here to Shaheen to update us from the latest and greatest, hot and front and center from Silicon Valley. Small logistics. Shaheen, do you want to share screen with your slides, or do you want me to do the Vanna routine?
Whatever is easier for you. I'm easy. Yeah.
It's probably easier for you to share from your system.
Then that's what we'll do. Okay. All right. Okay, so while I'm kind of looking for the slides, there are, when over the past really 2-3 years, and I'm sure this is a shared experience, which is why these discussions are really interesting, is that when I talk to people, really, no matter where on the planet, it almost feels like something is going on, that everybody is interested in a certain kind of conversation. And it's, I think in the chat there was a comment that there's all these things happening. So like one of the first questions in my mind was, why are there so many big trends suddenly in technology? It isn't just AI, it's also like, quantum computing and robotics and precision medicine. And it sort of feels like an avalanche of stuff happening at the same time. And of course, that's highly disruptive, So the next question that comes up here is that where is it all leading? In what way is the basic assumptions of society shifting? And how is that different in different parts of the world? And I believe there's a hunger out in the world to discuss this, to get your arms around it, to understand it more. I really feel that, and if you feel that, please kind of validate that so that I can add another point on that graph. But I think that makes it a discussion that is more than just the technology. It's like, what is really going on to the human race? So anyway, in that context, I put some slides together that hopefully can help us have a nice discussion. So one of them is as a way of trying to crudely summarize some of the big mega trends that we were seeing. So this is as of a couple of years ago. And you have basically Internet of Things, IoT. And I could argue that IoT is, I'm going to go counterclockwise here to tell the story, and then I'll come to what's on the right-hand side. You could say that the Internet of Things is the fountain of data. That's where data gets created. It's really at the edges, at the extremities of the network where data gets created at inception. Mm-hmm. And then it flows. As it flows, you have a data supply chain where it gets transformed as it goes along until you get various kinds of data product. You're posting something on the internet, that's a data product. You're having an insight, that's a data product. You could say that 5G is how it's getting transmitted and how it gets communicated, or is an example of how it gets communicated, or the leading edge of it. You could say AI, scientific engineering, modeling is the way you make sense of it. You could say quantum computing is an example of how you accelerate it. You could say blockchain is a way to transact it. But you kind of start forming a feel for like what is going on with data. Now, as a way of crudely summarizing it, you could say that IoT means everything is smart, everything is connected, and that's really good. And everything, so now the interesting stuff shows up. You could say that blockchain essentially means trust is computable. So now you're having data on the one side and computability on the other side, right? So if trust is computable, and if intelligence is computable, then what else is computable? So now you have on the data side, you have digitization, which is really allowing us to have structured information in a way that can be programmed and manipulated and eventually optimized. And then on the other hand, you can use that data to compute things. And I think those are two big trends that are going to change sort of the fabric of society in a way. And then quantum computing, which is still really at its infancy, but the research is very interesting. And we can discuss it if there's like this interest in it. It really is fundamentally based on the probabilistic nature of nature and how we can harness that to do certain things way faster, way more accurately, or at a way lower energy than we could otherwise. So that's kind of one way to look at it. To kind of go right past, there's also, every time some of these big trends happen, certain problems are solved, certain problems can be solved, and certain problems are kind of being created. Like when we went through the whole industrial revolution, a lot of stuff really helped. We can now have skyscrapers like we didn't have and cars like we didn't have, but we also have a climate issue, right? We could really accelerate with nuclear energy, but we also have like a nuclear weapon thing. So we came up with like, what are the big threats that we see in society right now? And I believe a lot of these threats can be traced, in fact, to the technological innovation that's happening at the pace that it is happening. Now, if we went through everything we've gone through over 50 years, we would have time to absorb it. But because it's happening so fast, that is really a big part of the challenge. So I kind of put it on LinkedIn about a year or so ago, and it was in just different formats. And one of my friends said, you could almost spell panic with what you have there. And I'm saying, oh, how could I miss that as a marketing guy? So now it's like panaic, I guess. You can't quite do panic, but it's close enough, like he said. So pandemic is a threat. Autocracy is a threat. And I actually could make a case that even the threat of autocracy has to do with the technological pace of change that's happening, that's kind of feeling people a little bit puzzled on like what's going on, and maybe I need help, and maybe I can just entrust this person to kind of do it for me. Nuclear continues to be a threat, both in terms of the positive. The positive is really good, the negative is a threat. AI, of course, as you mentioned in the chat, it's got all this kind of nirvana that it is promising, but the transition to that nirvana is looking pretty challenging. What is the impact on my pricing? I'm already seeing some customers saying, you're going to be using AI anyway, so what's my AI discount? You're not doing it anymore, right? So be prepared for that. But also in terms of impact on jobs, impact on livelihoods, the positive and the negative. And then climate, of course, continues to be a big problem. So these are like big problems that hopefully the new technology can actually help solve. We know, for example, in climate modeling and forecasting, the use of AI and use of supercomputing is really helping to understand not just what the problem is, but also what the solutions could be. So as a result of all of that, one thing that kind of came about was, you have change, and change causes complexity. Complexity requires competence, and it requires clarity, and it requires confidence. And really, if you're looking for words, C and P are good letters to start with, because there are a lot of words that start with those letters. And then you do that in the context of Silicon Valley, as I was saying earlier, where the pace of change is unreal, and basically a lot of the people who are pushing the change are not really qualified to think about it in terms of the social construct anyway, and therefore they don't. But the pace continues. So, the bigger framing that I feel we are observing is really, we had industrial revolution, and now we have, you could call, digital revolution or information revolution, where the information content of everything is getting extracted, digitized, et cetera, et cetera. So what is the impact? What is the change? What is interesting to me is that the change is everywhere. It's everything. Now, usually when these things change, especially technology, one of the first things that gets impacted is war. In fact, even before that, it's all the vices and the sin industry. They are always the early adopter. If you really want to see who's at the leading edge of technology, go to Las Vegas or vicinity. They're always, but war is like right there. It's impacting work. It's impacting money. It's impacting the laws. It's impacting our health, as we talked about with Neuralink as an example of that. But precision medicine, you might have heard the saying that's kind of been floating around Silicon Valley for a few years now, that if you live to the year 2030, you can live forever. Because by then, the combination of everything is going to just, unless you get hit by a bus, you'll be fine. It's impacting art, and it's even impacting spirituality. And it's impacting basically everything. So if you think of it that way, now I mention art because if you go back to pre-industrial revolution, or especially in Europe where it was all happening, you could absolutely see the impact of this emerging technological shift on the art, on the paintings, on the statues, on the sculpture, and it led to different kinds of even schools of art, from romanticism to modernism and what came in between, right? And that's also usually a kind of a canary in coal mine sort of a thing. It's usually an early flag that goes up that what's going on in the artistic, because they're reflecting society in a way that is really interesting. Now, those are all kind of good and bad, but sort of the part that is interesting to me is kind of on the right-hand side, is that as all of this change is happening, the complexity is shooting up. Is our capability keeping up with it? Is our competence keeping up with it? And of course, ideal scenario is that your competence is bigger than your confidence, and the two of them are bigger than the complexity that you're trying to establish, right? And if you permute that, you're going to be missing something. So that's another kind of a example. And then I have this kind of final slide, and I didn't mean to actually go through a presentation, but it kind of happened that way. I think change is easiest when it's your own idea, because then you're the change agent, then you're wondering why people don't keep up with you. So the answer is really very simple then. If you have change and you don't like it, or whether you like it, get busy making it your own idea. And the only way you're going to make it your own idea is to engage, like Jennifer, you were saying, is that lean into it as you were also saying, and participate. And the beauty of all these technologies that we have is that they're such early stages that participation isn't too difficult. It's not like you're trying to get engaged in quantum chemistry and say, holy moly, I have to now go read 15 books and understand complex math to be able to participate. No, it's such early stages that participation is quite easy to do. So because I kind of, am representing an industry analyst firm, and a 2x2 chart is kind of the currency of that trade, we kind of did a 2x2. It's a good change or a bad change. Is it expected or is it unexpected? If it is unexpected change and it is a bad change, then really the only choice that exists is reinvention. You have to reinvent yourself, right? If you make it your own idea, then it's not unexpected, it is expected. And then you can just recalibrate. And if you turn it into a good change from a bad change, then you can actually appreciate it and celebrate it and such. So I pause there, and maybe we can kind of have some good discussion as a, kind of result of these ideas.
Great points. Thank you very, very much, Shaheen. Questions and comments verbally, and I see there's a couple in the chat that I want to come to around education and compensation, but Philip, jump on in first.
Well, thank you. I mean, that was superb, Shaheen. I've been scribbling down as you were presenting. Something which I've used in presentations is I said that we may be overwhelmed by AI and the distributed ledgers and quantum computers, but wait till those get together and start having babies.
happening. Yeah.
And it's coming, and that I think the combination of these technologies is where the real acceleration is going to come. And I think particularly there are many questions out there where we know how to get to the answers, but we don't currently have the computing power or the algorithms to answer them. But it's coming. I mean, I think particularly in battery technology, where there are theoretically better elements than lithium for batteries. It's just that the alignment of the electrons, etc., is so complicated that we don't know yet how to do it. But stick an AI program on a quantum computer, and suddenly we're going to have rubidium batteries, which are 100 times better than lithium batteries. And then where are we going to be?
Yeah.
It's those sorts of things where we're going to get the enormous benefit of this. I think we're only in the foothills at the moment, as you rightly say.
Yeah. I don't have much to add to what you said, but I do want to point out that an undercurrent of what you're saying is the cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary aspect of things. And I think we kind of observed that as well. I used to joke that if you went back like 100 years ago, the person who won the Nobel Prize in chemistry was really, really good at chemistry. And now it's like the person who applies biology and economics to chemistry, And that
Absolutely.
is the combination that makes it like suddenly so interesting. So I think that's a really important point.
And can I just come in here? That is something where we in the West have a huge advantage. I mean, a while ago, I was at Tsinghua University in Beijing, and I met the professors of distributed ledger, AI, and quantum computing. And I said, well, you guys must be talking to each other all the time. And they'd scarcely ever met, because an autocracy depends on siloing knowledge. And I just when I look at places like China and think, oh, they're brilliant people, but at the end of the day, they're generating more academic papers than anybody else. But what have they actually given the world? I'm struggling to see where anything which has come out of China, which is right at the cutting edge, which is making a fundamental difference. Maybe, I'm just an outside observer, but maybe you're seeing it differently, Shahin.
Well, I think as it relates specifically to China, I think their historical journey is important because they started out like that. The real litmus test has been standard of living. And as long as that continues to improve, there's no problem, right? What's there to complain about? But there will come a time when, so in fact, let me back up. One of the observations that I have that I want to check with you all is that I believe technology imposes its own culture.
Yes.
It is not that we impact technology, is that technology says, I am a puzzle, and for you to solve me, you need to use this particular key or it's just not going to work. And the example that I give is that, let's say I start farming tomorrow. It's going to take me 2 or 3 seasons before I'm either dead or I learn to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to plant. Yeah. Because when I don't, I die. So next thing you know, after like 20, 30, 40 years, I have developed the farming work ethics. Yeah, because it imposed on me, right? And if I want to go do technology like, we have done over the past 50 years with like industrial revolution type, it's going to be like soon before I realize I need to go to the factory. Like 9 to 5 is not a bad window. There's a first shift, second shift, third shift. What is the culture that is going to be imposed by information revolution? We don't know that yet. And I don't think anybody's really figured it out yet, right? So if you really think of the culture being imposed on society by technology because the rules of survival and thrival demand it, then the situation is going to have to change, because you can carry it on for a while, but at some point, like you cannot have knowledge workers without having knowledge workers. They need to be highly educated. They need to have, autonomy. They need to be able to decide at the extremities, not command and control doesn't work, et cetera, et cetera. So I think those are ultimately the challenges of the era that we live in. Another example is that if you go to like the late 1800s, Russia had the most advanced railroad system. Now, they imported it from Germany and England and others, right? But the society was still agrarian. Like they had it, but they never grokked it. And I think that's kind of the difference and the challenge that we have in society. Just because I'm using AI doesn't really mean anything if I'm not truly understanding the essence of it.
Yeah, and that's, I want to jump in, and I promise we'll come to you, Diva. But I've seen a couple of interesting comments from Dinesh and a couple of others in the chat. And I mean, one of the areas that I feel extremely strongly about, and I think it's a huge opportunity for major transformation, but I don't yet see it happening on a broad scale, and that is in education. Because with technology, we as a global society have an opportunity to leverage technology to allow young people, and that could be from kindergarten up through graduate school, to allow young people to learn in whole new ways. For example, experiential. I mean, there's no need today for children to sit in a room and have a teacher yap at them. I mean, that's craziness. I mean, let's have the teacher give them tools where they experiment and they explore and they immerse themselves and they use AI and VR and work together to learn by doing. And also just the way technology is used even at the rudimentary levels in schools. I mean, I get into tons of debates about should the classroom allow students to use Chat GPT. I mean, that's a stupid question. I mean, it's like, of course they should allow use of it, but they should teach them how. I mean, we need to teach people how to use the tool, but how to think about how you use it, when and how and where you use it, and to be critical and to be discerning of what comes from the tool, and to rethink and to build those critical thinking skills. To effectively use technology, people have to think a lot more than they did without technology to use it correctly, in my opinion. And that's the role that I think is being overlooked in schools. We need to teach young people how to think and how they can leverage technology to jump in and create that new society. Because I agree, Shaheen, that the technology could control the future and could drive the culture. But I believe that we as people have an opportunity that we retain control and we learn how to use the technology to enhance the future. That's
We
up
sure
to
do.
us as people to jump in and not be lazy.
I feel like it's a puzzle, and until you solve it, you haven't solved it, and you're gonna, bang your head against the wall until you solve it, right? And I actually think, there are days when I kind of can map this to kind of our political observation, and I'm saying that not the entire world is not moving at the same pace. Even within a country, not everybody's moving at the same pace. Not every region is moving at the same pace. And if you crudely sort of map this part of the country to more of an agrarian, this part more of a factory, kind of an early industrial stage, this one too, you might even get some new insights on why the political behavior is the way we see it. But ultimately, it is about, in my mind, solving the puzzle. And the puzzle isn't solved until it is solved. And you're not going to change the key. You're not going to change the lock. The lock has been presented to you. So you want to make the best use of AI, quantum, this, that, and the other. This is the way to do it.
And it takes work and it takes jumping in and thinking critically. So Deva, I want to go to you, and then I know Aniko had a question in the chat that I want to go to, and then we'll come to Philip. And by the way, I am good to be on here for another 45 minutes, whatever period you all want to continue the dialogue. So don't feel panicked to jump in. Deva, all yours.
How are you folks? How are you doing? I'm based in Dublin, Ireland. I'm a CEO of boutique investment bank. I just wanted to add, and I'm a father of two teenage daughters, right? So I'm not, a technology savant as they are. Shaheen, just adding to what you've said, and Jennifer as well. Prior to being in investment banking, I was very much involved in management consultancy, especially in the talent space. So, you talk about how our kids are being educated in a new toolkit and, the cognitive process and all the rest and how that should be curated and also inspiring. And, that's stuff that's very, very important to me, especially as a father. And I'm, also an uncle to many nephews and nieces as well. But the thing is, it's also, but from the end-to-end cycle, I also want to say it's not just how we educate our kids, but what jobs will they end up working in, right? I do some pro bono stuff with some firms, some charities in India. I always thought, Jennifer, education, 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 and they're like, Deva, no, job creation, job creation, job creation. We can pump out a lot of graduates, but what are they going to work in? And of course, now the notion of what the world of work looks like, what a new portfolio of jobs within a career looks like. Carol, you talked about the fact that you previously were in corporate, now you're more of an entrepreneur and a coach and all the rest, and I've got some of that narrative in my background as well. So it's a case of, and Shaheen, the end-to-end conversation, we have to be careful of also putting silos onto and applying silos onto that, right? Yeah, education is important, but what kind of jobs are being cultivated and prepared in the future, and and that's changing rapidly. And also how I talked to some of the graduates from some of the best IITs from India and all the rest, and I talked to their professors, and then I talked to the people that want to employ them, and they're like, Deva, they're very smart kids, but they're not job ready. So there has to be that piece of the conversation as well. Safras, I see you nodding there. So it's a case of like, we need to converse constantly with each other as opposed to having silos within our within the ecosystem itself. So I just wanted to challenge us and remind us of all of that. But the thing is also, Shine, I think if you talk about the technology imposing itself, I look at my children, for instance, as a lens to look through their experience. I think that cultural component has always been evident, right? The way I grew up, and I'm a different generation from them, obviously, but it's a case of, how my kids decide nowadays, their decision-making process, their cognitive process is so very different from mine. But I know mine's changed because of the advent of technology and toolkit that I use. So I think that culture intrinsically is being embraced at different generations, but it's about us noticing it. Maybe I'm saying the obvious, but it's about us noticing it. And I constantly ask, and how the kids communicate as well. Now we happen to be a family of readers, so my daughters are very articulate because they can read and write, not just spell check everything, but just Gen AI, a response all the time. We insist upon that, but I think it's already happening, and it's about us paying attention to it, right? And maybe again, like I said, I'm saying the obvious thing, but again, Shaheen, you talk about within a nation. If you look at the states, for instance, what's happening in the valley is very different from what's happening in the Midwest, what's happening East Coast, West Coast, up north. Texas is 5 countries in one, whatever may be the case, right? Or 5 cultures in one, right? So whatever is the case. So, and then you look at different industries in different countries and different departments in different industries and all the rest. So the question I'm asking, everyone here, the esteemed cohort I'm talking to at the moment is, and I know it's kind of an open-ended question, and apologize upfront for it, but are you seeing, depending on the work that you do and the countries that you live in or the region that you live in, are you seeing, besides from menial tasks in the AI domain, right? Besides from menial tasks, are you seeing any particular industry that's embracing AI in a deep level quicker than others? Now, again, the caveat being, well, what country, what region, what industry, what department in the industry. So I work in banking and private equity and M&A, and I work a lot with family offices as well with their investment portfolios. And I find, there's a slow kind of the embracing the technology at a deep level and a philosophical level and cultural level are things happening very slowly from my experience. Are you guys noticing trends in specific industries where you feel that they are embracing it faster than other industries? Please, if you don't mind, Jennifer, can you help?
Yeah, I see in healthcare, pharmaceutical, that
Right,
area,
right,
just because
right,
there is, in many cases, there is a burning platform and urgency. There's
right.
not enough workers globally to take care of the generation that is going to be needing their services. So I think that is a driver there that I see.
Okay.
What do you see, Shaheen?
I think there's a slight difference between automation and then super sophisticated automation that can be classified as AI, right? And what I'm seeing in AI as it relates specifically to large language models, which is really the leading edge now, and sort of surprisingly works better than people expected. I feel like you have the consumer side where people are dabbling with ChatGPT and all the other tools that have been mentioned. And then you have the so-called enterprise. I think enterprise right now is in the proof of concept phase, fundamentally. Within that proof of concept, I mean, for some people, that's a phase. For some people, it's proof of concept hell because it's like really hard to figure out what to do. But within that, where I see AI help right now is obviously in content creation. Where can you take that? You can take that into marketing. You can take that into legal. You can take that into software engineering. And I think those are the three places where I see marketing, legal, software engineering is where you see some of these things being used. Again, some of them are just really super sophisticated automation, but enhanced with some of the AI that is there. And there, the savings could be absolutely fantastic, as in it is a fantasy to imagine it and it actually happens. But also it points back to your comment about jobs, right? Because I believe, again, these things are going to take decades. So it's not, that's actually part of the problem. Do you do it now or do you do it 2 years from now? Do you take steps now or do you are you already late, right? So getting the timing right is everything to manage the transition. So I'm not suggesting these things are imminent, but sooner or later, it's going to not be about jobs. It's going to be about the work that needs to be done.
Yes.
Because already we are seeing that there's a structural problem with jobs because there is no job that's going to keep me employed in an effective way, in a way that is interesting to me and useful to the employer, 8 hours a day, every day. That's just like, doesn't solve. And when you go look at your employees, what if the guy who does your marketing is also an excellent cook? What if the person who does your accounting is also a beautiful poet? What if they have like 15 other interests and skills that you're not taking advantage of, that you could, if you redefine the job description to sort of be in a different model? So I think and now the gig economy, so to say, is the beginning of that kind of a structural shift, except that for those who have to do it, it's not pleasant. For those who do want to do it, it's something that they need to be enabled to do. So I think like the impact on work and jobs is also non-trivial.
Okay. Thank you so much, Shaheen. Thank you, everyone.
I'm sensing
Great
a
insights.
future session will explore what is the concept of work in the future, because it does need to be fully redefined.
If I could just add to that, Shaheen, when I used to run large teams, manage large teams, I touched upon all of that. What if I actually use that actual sentence? What if I've got an accountant who's an excellent poet, right? Just like I'm a bad poet running an investment bank. But the thing is, it's like, yeah, we have values and strengths, and maybe our job title doesn't always leverage or utilize them. And sometimes, so much talent within an organization that we're not harnessing, and that includes the technology stack that can be embedded into behavioral and habitual practice as well. Thanks, folks.
Well
I may
said.
have to leave a little bit earlier, Jennifer. I apologize.
No worries. I appreciate it. People need to jump off. You're welcome to. Do note in the chat, I copied in the link to give us feedback as well as the upcoming sessions. But I'd love to hear from, did we lose him? Shiraz, I think we lost, oh, no. I'm so bad with names. Sarfaz, you had your hand up and it
Fraz,
was
yes.
going
Hi.
down.
Hey, Jennifer. Hi.
Hi, did you have a
Good
question?
afternoon. Yes, no, in fact, I just wanted to add to what Deva was talking about, the
Yeah.
practical use case of applications, since we are. So I'm dialing in from Saudi Arabia. I think it's the least country expected to adopt AI on an overall note. But just to give you an update of what is happening, I mean, ever since they introduced the tax regime and also, the introduction of digital invoicing, what we are seeing right now is they're able to implement AI to pull up the non-compliances. So we've got a compliance team on a holding entity level trying to ensure whatever records we are filing are intact. Because it's not that pulling up the record, but they are able to get back to you with the predated information saying where exactly or how did you manage that, and we would like to get a bit more clarity. So they are adopting pretty well. It comes under the General Authority for Tax, which is called as ZACA. They've implemented AI to our knowledge in terms of compliance. So, we are a foreign investment company with over 17 licenses. So we've got a compliance team trying to make sure, whatever reports are being filed, it's meeting the requirements of the government and it is actually compliant in a sense where as per what the government critical mandatory requirements are, because they've updated recently on the digital invoicing system. So they've got a specific method of how you upload your invoices into the system. So it's been tracked. So there's no, the government knows end to end, right from how you procure your goods, or if you're importing the goods to how you're selling your goods. So they're able to track the in-house process. So far, no income tax, but then there are corporate taxes. So they are also able to understand what is a taxation impact on a government. So this is what we see here. I mean, in other use cases, I mean, I was talking to someone from the AI community, especially in VAB, who have come up with good solutions in the construction sector to enable more, active, implementation for safe work practices. And then here again, there are traffic camera violation systems which are using AI to understand who or when or which vehicle or the passenger, I mean, if there is a violation of seatbelt, the speed cameras, all of them are working functionally well. I'm assuming UAE would be a bit more advanced in terms of the speed compliance and the traffic regulatory requirements, but then Saudi, again, considering the size of the geography, they are catching up also. We worked on some projects, so there is enforcement in the traffic space. So these are the compliance or the enablement perspectives, but how do we get ourselves skilled to get a job there? Again, that's $1 million question. I mean, how do we be employable for all these skills? The next generation, how do you guide them? I think it's a collated approach which we all need to adopt. I mean, that's the only small, humble thought I could share. I mean, and all of your experience.
Great topics, which we will definitely dive further into in the future. Denise, you had a question, then we'll go back to Philip. I know, Philip, you've had your hand up, but you've had a little airtime, so I want to give others the chance.
Thank you so much. I've really been enjoying it. I think the diversity of this chat is a reflection of the diversity of AI. I think that there's an interesting question about developing private AI programs for companies to protect confidentiality, and the challenge that gives to make sure that it's both open and closed, so that it has everything it needs. That's one thought. And the other is, I do believe, I'd like to know if anybody else agrees, that as far as the younger generation, they have to grow up with the idea that you can't know what career you will have. You have to be able to deal with that flexibility. It's an inherent challenge to innovation that I believe it's really going too fast for its own good. And we see this in particular in healthcare, where there is so much innovation that no decision maker in a hospital, clinic, or other can even come to a conclusion that he or she knows will be correct for the next year. What does that mean for impacting on his resource? So I've said many different things. I just wanted to smash them all in there to give you a feeling. And I hope that all these fascinating people in your group will connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yes, yes, please connect with each other. It's definitely, no, that's great, great points. And I love the fact that if there's any skill that we need to educate ourselves and the next generation, it's agility. How people, in my opinion, how people can have that confidence that Shaheen talked about, that confidence that I can manage, I can juggle, I can deal with whatever comes in this complex world. Absolutely essential. Now back to you, Philip.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. I was just reflecting on something you said and also what Shaheen said and linking the two together. When it comes to the example Shaheen gave of Russia and its railways in the 19th century and it still remaining an agrarian society, I don't think you need to go back to Russia and in the 19th century for an example like that. I think you talk about education in the 21st century, where quite honestly, technology is all there, but the culture is completely unchanging. And if anywhere needs technology to impose its own culture, then it's in education. And just as an aside, I'm in the process, a long process of acquiring a higher education institution and a university with a view to seeing if we could do something about that. But just a general question, stepping away from education. One of the things which I think is a challenge in artificial intelligence, I'd be very interested to get Shaheen's response to this, is that AI is uneconomic. AI itself is uneconomic because two things are happening. One is at the large language model level, they're in effect utilities, the modern utilities of the 21st century. And the regulators have caught up with them far, far earlier compared with what has happened with the equivalent utilities in the world of social media. So Facebook and Google had an absolute riot for a decade. The LLM manufacturers are not going to get that. They're already being regulated. So that's the first problem. And the second is in terms of app generation. I mean, I subscribe to about half a dozen AI newsletters, and they all give me app of the day. Now, frankly, there are hundreds of AI apps, all doing roughly the same thing. And frankly, they've all forgotten about graphical user interface because you click on them and their landing page, you're none the wiser what the hell they're doing. What Bill Gates said about GUI being the big breakthrough and ChatGPT the next big breakthrough. Well, ChatGPT's forgotten all about GUI. Anyway, to aside, what's happening with all these apps is that we've got the Adam Smith perfect competition. You know, many suppliers, many buyers, which means no economic rent, nobody makes any profit. So is AI going to strangle itself? Let me throw that over.
Unmute.
I'm on mute. Yeah. That is definitely a question that is hovering and it's like in the ether. And there was a financial analyst report a few weeks ago, essentially questioning the ROI of AI. But while I sort of expect that there will be hiccups and there will be AI chills, as I call it, I don't expect an AI winter. I think that this thing is already useful in certain ways. If you want to do a 10 trillion parameter model, like some people are talking about, that's sort of one thing. But there's a lot you can do with small language models. One of my colleagues is, he's the kind who kind of needs to get his hand dirty to kind of learn what he's doing. So he's been driving what he calls me GPT. So he's pretty prolific. He's written books, he's written articles. So he's like essentially taken all of his digital footprint and is like building a language model that is a digital twin of himself, right? Now that seems like a kind of use case that you could do relatively simply. You're not really looking to add from, it's just me. Like, can I remember everything that I ever knew? Right there, that's already a positive, right? So I feel like that's point one. Point two is that I think we need 2 or 3 more major innovations within AI before we really get there. Now, deep learning was one of the first ones, and they say, oh my God, this thing is kind of working, right? It needs a lot of compute, it needs a lot of this, but it's kind of working. And then like the transformation models and LLMs show up, and it was again sort of, oh my God, this thing is working a lot better than we thought. I think we need like 2 or 3 more like this. And then we'll be in a place where the stuff actually works without too much effort. And it actually sort of really moves the needle. But I think it's happening. And I think the expectation is that this thing is looking promising enough that I don't want to be left out. And by the way, that's a common thread in all of these technologies. Same thing with quantum computing. What if this thing works? I need to have a seat at the table. And even if it doesn't work, what I'm left with is 200 PhDs in physics. That's not a bad thing, right?
Yeah, and it kind of makes me reflect back a few decades ago when the internet became the wave, and we all, well, some of us remember the big wave of everything was about eyeballs, and Webvan was going to deliver your groceries, and millions of investment, and then there was a winter because there was too much exuberance before we came to what is real. But that was from introduction, if you will, of the World Wide Web to going up, down, and around. I mean, that was over a 10-year period. One could say just with Chat GPT as a starting place of this revolution, I mean, we're 2 years in. It's not 10 years, we're 2 years. And when you look at the complexity and how much has been fueled and how much we've built on the internet and the work that's been going on quantum for years, and the work that's been going on with things like Web3 and blockchain, I mean, we're in a very interesting period. And just to note as a sanity check, some of the notes that I jotted down, there's a lot of interplays around what we've talked about today that tie into ultimately business models. What are jobs going to be? How are people going to be compensated? If it's all gig based on your skills and your motivation and where you fit, how is that going to pay the bills for people to have a life? What does it mean to have a life? What does all of this mean for compensation levels? How does this tie into, is it capitalistic consumerism versus a circular world that we move into? A lot of things that I would love to get a couple of other thoughts from you individually along the way, maybe put in the survey afterwards, because I think we could have some interesting journeys along those topics in the future. Any other burning questions, points people want to make before we let some go for cocktail hour, some go for breakfast? Good. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We will dissect from the Zoom AI summary and get a short summary out. We will get a little bit of the main part of the session cleaned up and up on the jennifervessels.com/journey into the future website. The next session is October 8th. Please register. We'll have more information on topic and featured guest and all of that good stuff. And then we'll be back together in November, and I'll figure out a 2025 schedule, assuming there is interest to keep walking in 25, shall we say. And thank you,
Thank you,
Shahid,
Jennifer.
for joining and diving in, and great discussions and great conversation as always, folks.
Thank you. Thank you. Delight for me to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.